Justice Smith, and my PowerPoint will be on small towns attempting to recover during COVID-19. For my research question, I will be exploring how has COVID-19 impacted small towns and how are they struggling to recover from its damages. For this, I will be focusing on my own hometown. This slide, I will be researching my own town and using them as an example for my research question. So for some background information, my hometown is Wyomissing, Pennsylvania. The population is 10,499, and I added the high school class size to kind of give you not an example, but more of a reference point of how many people. So about per high school graduating class is about 178. Its main attractions are the small shops and businesses that line the main streets. What's happening in Wyomissing is not exclusive to this area. It's happening all over small-town America. Many small businesses have been excluded or have not received the federal relief designated for them. Specifically in Pennsylvania, $1.3 billion of federal coronavirus emergency funds went to balancing state budget instead of going to, obviously, corona relief emergency funds. And all that money was then missed for struggling families, struggling business owners, those who dealt with coronavirus and can't pay medical bills, etc. Citizens in lower income areas such as Reading are experiencing the inability to pay for their bills and access to health care because they are already low income, and then if they're losing their jobs because their jobs are shut down, they're not having access to a health care plan. They're not having access to money, and they're unable to, have that income to stay afloat in these times when you need the money, you need to be able to have a job and access healthcare. And because of this, most of them are then suffering from coronavirus. Popular restaurants such as Tomcat Cafe are closing forever. So restaurants across our county are closing forever because of the inability to pay for to be open, to have business. And after months of waiting, small businesses can now apply for the Berks County Small Business New Start Grant. Only not all businesses will be granted this relief. If you don't hit the specific requirements, you will not be able to get this money. I did an interview with a small town business owner in my area. This is what she had to say when asked how she was dealing with the pandemic for her business. Our business has really struggled during the pandemic. Our sales have gone down so much, especially in the very beginning. We were at a point where we almost had to shut down permanently. We have been having to get creative when it comes to getting our business out to more people. How are we dealing with the impacts of COVID-19? Businesses have been shortening their hours to save money and try not to be open hours where they do not get a lot of customers. They began using apps like Grubhub and Delivery Dudes to reach more people. Small clothing, jewelry, and craft stores have been opening websites so they can reach people in different countries, different states, different counties who wouldn't be able to access their stuff otherwise. And even though many are doing these things are still waiting for relief checks to help them, because even though they've been trying to accommodate for the situation, they still are not making as much money as they had been before and are struggling to make ends meet. And why missing? Why missing classes are very easily split into two groups: the upper middle class and the lower class. Most people fit into these two groups. It's not rare, but it's uncommon to see not in these two groups. Many of the lower class citizens are also the small business owners in the area. And because of this, they don't have the financial capability to keep their businesses afloat if they're bringing in no money. They don't have other income. They don't have like a set aside savings with all kinds of money that will allow them to keep their businesses open and to be able to afford to be open. And that's a big problem, because that causes them to then have to close permanently or for shorter amounts of time. And it also causes them as human beings to not have any money, because if they don't have their business open, which is their main source of income, they don't have any money. And the upper class is what deals with most of the decisions for our county, where when it comes to like relief money and where it goes, they're the ones deciding who's getting this money, where this money is going, if it's going to be going to that, and they're the type of people who've decided that 1.3 billion isn't going where other places it was supposed to go. It's not going to coronavirus relief. It's going to managing the state budget instead. And because of this, it just shows how much they don't sympathize with these lower classes, and they don't vote in their favor in the end, because they don't experience, and they haven't been experiencing, the same struggles that these classes have been. And they're just putting them through the same loop constantly, and they're constantly having money and being successful and not struggling, and they're putting laws in place, and they're passing things that are then impacting the lower class negatively, impacting minorities. My county specifically has a high minority rate, especially due to meatpacking plants, farms in the area, stuff like that, places where there tend to be statistically more minorities in the area when it comes to rural sections of the U.S. And because of this, the virus disproportionately is affecting them in comparison to whites, because they can't afford to stop working, right? They need the money. Especially if you're working farm jobs and meatpacking, you're already not making a lot of money. You're most likely lower income, and you need this money. You need the healthcare plan that comes with it. You can't just stop working because of the virus. And because of this, they're now being exposed to it more and are more likely to get it. A recent study showed that rural communities with meatpacking plants with the outbreak of COVID-19 have an average infection rate 5 times higher than the rest of rural America. And a large share of these rural Hispanic areas in the country with meatpacking plants employ a disproportionate share of Hispanics, because, like I said, they need jobs. These places are more likely to hire them, and sadly, they're willing to pay them less, and they need the money. And these places are, offering them money, even though it's on terrible wages. But because of this, they're working there, and they have to be working these jobs. They can't just quit. They can't just leave. They can't take breaks because they have coronavirus and they're getting the virus. And not a lot of people are noticing that or seemingly caring about that. So here I have a graph that shows Black and Indigenous Americans experiences the highest death toll from COVID. So it's showing that Black, Indigenous, Pacific Islanders, Latinos, whites, and Asians are suffering the most from COVID-19, because in the U.S. there tend to be the minorities. They're less. They get paid less. They're lower income, and because of this, they're, like I said before, experiencing COVID on a higher scale. And this is not just here in Pennsylvania. This is across the country. Minorities are being disproportionately affected everywhere. Due to the inequalities between minorities and whites, they're suffering from low incomes and poor health insurance, all of which the upper class whites have. and it means that they're better able to stay away from these diseases, but it's then forcing these lower income people to be more exposed to the diseases. So the conclusion to all of this that I've found is that COVID-19 has a major impact in all areas, not just urban, especially not just urban. I think that the news has focused so much just on urban areas and has ignored small towns who are unable to get the relief packages, the money, and how the government ignores them. Relief packages are not given where intended. So just because the government gave us 1.3 billion does not mean that we're getting it in that specific area for coronavirus, as you saw. Businesses have had to reinvent themselves to reach more people. They've had to make websites, start going on places like Etsy and such, using places like Grubhub to be able to reach broader audiences and to be able to regain the income that they are losing. Stratification within small towns costs lower classes the ability to not suffer from the pandemic. So because of the stratification, because the need for lower class people and the upper class not helping, not caring, keeping their money, and basically relying on lower class people to keep the pyramid, so to speak, in shape. These people are suffering, and the upper class just do not care to talk about it, don't care to help, and they just suffer more and more. And minorities are suffering everywhere, not just here. Like I said before, this is not exclusive to us. This is across the country. You're seeing minorities who are suffering, and especially not all relief funds are targeting them. They're not. They might just be targeting small businesses, and if you're not a minority business owner, you're not getting that money. There might be situations where you have to have certain qualifications, and they also don't qualify for those qualifications, and it's honestly inherently racist because there might be relief funds that are specifically targeted towards the majority, which is white people, and they're not giving attention to the places that desperately need it.